everybody, to another exciting episode of Lubrication Across the Nation, brought to you by DGP, Dynamic Green Products, bio-based, zero compromise. Make sure to check them out at changeYourOil.com. Today, I have a very special guest. With me is Erin Sheridan from Red Wing Ranch out of Colorado. Thank you so much for joining me, Erin.
Thanks for having me. It's cool to be here.
So you are the programs manager over there at Red Wing Ranch. And how long have you been with Red Wing?
I have been with Red Wing a little over 2.5 years.
2.5 years, nice. And you have a wealth of knowledge in the field and around agriculture in itself. You have a bachelor's at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I swear I was going to get that one right, and I already tongue twisted it. Agricultural and environmental plant sciences. And then you also went on with your master's at Montana State with land resources and environmental sciences. How did you end up, like, when you were in high school and you were like, hey, this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah, totally. Well, my favorite subject in high school was physics, and which is so shocking to me now to think that, because I'm definitely not like math person, but I loved that. But I grew up in like a really rural area in Northern California near Tahoe, and cattle ranching and everything I'm doing now was around me, but I wasn't necessarily a part of it. But we were definitely in kind of a food desert in terms of fresh produce, at least year round. And I had a mentor that turned me on to aeroponics, which is similar to hydroponics. So for my senior project, I secured some grants and bought those for the high school, and we all got to plant a bunch of vegetables and see them grow and then eat them in our school lunches. So that kind of changed the trajectory of wanting to get into agriculture and be part of the effort to provide food for the world. And so that's why I decided to study that at Cal Poly and just love my experience there.
Nice. And then, so did you go straight from Cal Poly over to Montana? Did you have some time in between?
I definitely had time in between. I think about 5 years between school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So during that time, were you planning on continuing on with the education at that point, or did you decide after the fact when you kind of wanted to dive in a little deeper into a certain aspect of it?
I have been really excited about the education component of learning skills that are needed for working lands and land management. So I knew that I wanted to pursue a career, or at least like do workshops and do that kind of thing eventually. And so talking to people that were in the college system, being able to like teach at a college or anything like that, I needed my master's. So that was the deciding factor there.
Something that I had noticed in your work is that you do have a bit of background in tree work yet.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, when I got to Cal Poly and there was the fun club fair, like the first weekend there, I was walking around and found the logging team, and I was like, well, I just did a bunch of sports in high school. I'm a strong gal. Like, this sounds fun. And I imagined like throwing axes into trees in the forest. Little did I know what I was getting into with sawing and chopping and all of that. And I think I'd barely ever touched a chainsaw before, but my husband now actually, I had just met him in college, and he convinced me to try and use the chainsaw and do one of the events. And then I fell in love with doing timber sports and competing at the collegiate level for the whole timber sports series and everything. Mm-hmm. So that was super cool. And then having that skill of using a chainsaw helped me get a job for the summer of doing fuel management and felling hazard trees and all of that for at least 50, 60 hours a week. And it helped me pay my rent when I went back. So it was cool that I learned that, but it was also really cool to spend a whole summer doing that. So I went back the next summer, and that's how I got into using chainsaws and equipment and really doing stuff on like a landscape level, not just as a hobby.
Right. Yeah. What was your favorite sport? I mean, not the sport, but your favorite event in the timber sports?
Yeah, I would say the underhand chop, and depends on who I'm competing against, whether it's for speed or least amount of hits or hard hit. But I really liked that.
Nice. Right on. That's a tough one. That's for sure.
Yeah. Have you done timber sports or competed?
No, I mean, I've like played around. That's about it. I haven't done actual, like, I've never competed by any means, any stretch of the imagination. So but it's always, I love watching it though. So then you've got this background in timber sports, and then you've got these degrees in environmental sciences. How do you end up transferring from there into the world of Red Wing Ranch?
Yeah, well, on one of the operations I was working on doing this Sawyer crew, as we called it, they needed help branding and vaccinating their cattle because it was also a large cattle ranch in California. And so I was like, sure, that sounds fun. And I had been around brandings and things as a kid, but that was super cool to be doing that and take a break from like just being on the saw all day long. So it was like a little bit quieter. And I loved that, and they ended up needing more help, so then I transitioned to doing cattle ranch, anything that was needed for a year fully, and then I have worked on cattle ranches, I've worked in Alaska on a farm, I've done a bunch of different things, and then was managing a small ranch, grass finished direct to consumer, and then wanted to learn more about regenerative grazing and how that was applied. So my friend from college actually sent me the position here at Red Wing when Christy, the owner, had first come back, as she was an absentee landowner and wanted to change things up with the management. So I applied and got to that position and was just ranching and helping out for the last 2 years. It was only supposed to be 6 months, and now I've been here 2.5 years and have transitioned my position into building this education program, which has been really cool. So yeah, that's how I got here.
So you must really like it there then, I take it.
Yeah, it's been awesome. And just we all are very passionate about what we're doing in land management and creating spaces for women to come and learn skills that are needed for working on the land. So yeah, it's been really cool.
So tell us a little bit about Red Wing Ranch. I mean, it's, you know, when folks hear ranch, they have a certain thought that, goes through their mind. But I mean, just from what I know of Red Wing, it's a lot different than your average ranch as far as just kind of the outlook that you all have and what you want to become with this ranch. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so we are located in South Central Colorado near Gardner, which if you Google it, you might not even find it because we're pretty remote. But like I said before, Christy came back a couple years ago and she has her PhD in ecology and has looks at ranching through that lens. And then Fiona, who I had known before I came out here, has extensive knowledge in more the cattle side of things and that part of the business. So first and foremost, we are a working cattle ranch, but we focus on regenerative ranching or practices, and that looks like doing managed grazing. We're moving cattle every 1 to 5 days. We don't have
Okay.
cattle on the place right now, but we do in the summer. We're monitoring, we're making sure that Fiona creates these awesome grazing plans that all the team has input on, but we are never overgrazing any pastures, and
Nice.
every pasture is different for what plants there are and the hydrology and all of that. So it depends on how many head we're running and how long they're going to be in there and what size paddock it is. And then on top of that, we've started doing an education enterprise where this last year was the first year that we did that. I was super excited to host Buckin Babes. That has been a long-term dream of mine, and that was kind of part of my final part of my master's project of just wanting to
Okay.
like, how do we actually implement this if we need to do all these different things in land management, especially in the West where we're very dry and currently in a drought? How can we utilize a chainsaw effectively and train women and others that need to know these skills? And so that had a ton of support and traction that we've grown this into a education program, and this is our second year going into it, and this will be our third Buckin Babes Chainsaw Workshop along with some other events.
Yeah, and you do it twice a year, correct? The Bucking
Yeah.
Babes? Nice. And then I also noticed too, because we're definitely going to dive into the Bucking Babes, but real quick, I want to touch on a couple of the other, there, I noticed there was a couple other programs that you have there. Yeah.
Yeah, this year we will also have a stockmanship clinic with Don Notto, who is phenomenal. And if you've heard of Bud Williams, started stockmanship and what that means. And she worked under him for almost or over a decade. And so now is going around the US and also training people on how to implement effective stockmanship. And then she also has her own ranching practices or business. So we have that. And then we also have a ranch management grazing workshop this summer as well. And Fiona, who I was mentioning before, runs the grazing and all of that, is the primary instructor for that. So yeah.
It's awesome. And of course, we'll make a mention of this towards the end as well. But since we're right here in the thick of it, how can people find out more information about all of your programs and more about the ranch?
Yeah, everything is at redwingranch.us and then / whatever workshop you're looking at. But everything is right there on the page. And you can also follow us on all social medias: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn at Red Wing Ranch.
All the places, folks. Have all the places. So we are when I first reached out to you, it was, we were talking about the Buckin Babes Chainsaw 101, and I just thought, I mean, just such a cool idea. And you had just mentioned that that was part of your master's program that you were going through. Did this come from something was this the timber sports driven, as far as when you were in the timber sports and you wanted something more to go with that? How did that whole thing formulate for you?
Yeah, I think timber sports in college drew like a specific or niche crowd, and some of my best friends, or all of them, are from the logging team at college, and so it was really cool to meet a lot of other women that I was on the team with or competing against that really honed in on using this skill, but in a competitive way, and not like, how do we fell this tree, or how can we buck up these things. So taking it to the next level, at my last job, I would host logging team to come out and do informal work days where they were helping us with firewood or doing some fuel management. And in turn, we're also getting training on using it in a real world setting and not just a very perfect log stand that there's nothing to go wrong. You just cut into it as quickly as you can. So yeah, it all came from that, and I've admired Red Ants Pants for a long time, and I've seen some other little workshops come up, but just I don't live in Montana and probably won't, at least for a while, so wanted to create something that wasn't just for people in the north part of the country, but specifically for women plus as well. It was cool.
And you mentioned that last year was the first year of the program. How's it been going into the second year? I mean, I mean, obviously you're having it for a second year, so that's a good thing. There's that desire, but were you surprised by just how it was embraced going into that first year?
Yeah, I had asked Women in Ranching, which is a really cool organization that supports exactly what it sounds like, women that are connected to or interested in land. Young farmers also supported the workshop. And then because I had done steel timber sports, I just called them to ask, do you guys have any additional chainsaws or another instructor? Like, didn't have a clear ask for them other than I know I need more support than just me and
Sure.
potentially some of the Red Wing team. And they're like, yeah, that sounds good. We have 2 women in Colorado that would probably help. And then I got on a phone call with them, Megan and Victoria Steele, and they have just been instrumental to the program as well, of really, one, donating chainsaws for us to use for the program, and then coming and helping with instruction. That is just so
Yeah, that's
important
awesome.
to start. I think there's such fear in chainsaws and learning how it works. That's something that they go through. And then also just all of the safety points before we got out into the field. So it's been really cool that way.
Speaking of safety points, and as you mentioned, that kind of that fear for those who are watching this, listening to this, and maybe it piques their curiosity. You're like, maybe that's something I'm interested in. Walk us through a little bit about how the program works. How many days is the program, and what all do you go through during it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. Right now, we started, the first one was just a 1-dayer. People could stay the night beforehand, and we spend the first couple hours from 8 to 10 in the office or in the barn looking at doing exactly that, going over safety, going over the basics, discussing a little bit more on the why would you be using a chainsaw, and just kind of that welcome. And then we get out into the field and do some more of the staged cutting, which is similar to what it would look like in competitive timber sports, of a log on a stand, where you're just really getting the feel for how a chainsaw works and starting it and doing all of those things in a very controlled environment. And that part is so much fun because we have 4 stands, 4 instructors, and the gals are rotating through to each instructor, so they're hearing a different instructor teaching kind of the same thing, or maybe seeing something different that another instructor didn't have or didn't share that part, and then also being able to cheer on the people that you're learning with. So it's a very like energetic, exciting time where I've had women that are in tears almost and don't want to touch the chainsaw, and then they're like, okay, I'm gonna do it, and do their first cut, and it is so cool and so exhilarating for them and just feeling powerful. So super cool that way. And then after lunch, we'll transition into the field. And then now we have created the workshop to be 2-day events. So similar structure, but there's more time in the field. To now the second day, we will actually be cutting out some trees with the focus and objective because we have woody brush encroachment. And so it's a great opportunity for women to learn how to fell a tree that is smaller and a little bit more low stakes, but still, okay, I felled the tree. Now, how do I limb it all? How do I buck it all? And then
Yeah.
what? What do I do with it now that it's on the ground? So, going through that of creating burn piles and discussing some other options there. So it's a very full circle, start to finish. And I don't know of any other programs that you actually get to fell a tree if you want to.
Well, yeah, absolutely. That's the same thing I was thinking. Usually it's more of that controlled environment, like you were talking about that first day scenario, and maybe a little bit more, but getting into actual felling, and the purpose of it too. That's what I love too. You're not just saying, okay, there's a tree, cut it down. Like, why are we cutting it? Why are we dropping it the way we are? And really diving into that as well. With the level of experience that people have, is this a kind of beginners only course? Is it beginners and intermediate? Who all would be able to benefit from this?
I think anyone that, whether you've never touched a chainsaw before or you do work with a chainsaw for a living, we've had that whole range here. And obviously, starting from the beginning, and if you've never touched a chainsaw before, you're going to learn so much. But also for any women that may just want to find other women that are in a supportive community, and there's something to learn for everyone. Like, I learn something new every time, especially with such a big group of gals of communicating in the field, or maybe you're used to a different type of environment, but because we're a working ranch, we also focus on there's a lot of things that you need to think about when you're doing field work. What's above you? What's below you? There's
Oh yeah.
rattlesnakes, there's red ant hills, there's a storm could roll in at any moment. So thinking about all of that. So yeah, I think that it's been cool to see women that are like, I touch a chainsaw probably or use one for my job or for doing stuff around my house and firewood, but I don't feel confident and I never learned the right way, or we don't really have safe practices that we've been doing. So it's been really cool to
Oh,
have
sure.
come and just hone in on wherever they're at.
Is this for the folks that come to this? Is it regional, or do you have people from all over? How does that work for you?
Yeah, we've had a lot of draw from Colorado and New Mexico, but we've also
Okay.
actually had really cool gal from North Carolina as well.
Oh,
We
wow.
have
Okay.
someone coming from California that to this next Buckin Babes. Yeah, it's been cool. And we've had
Yes.
people asking to bring in other places, but the magic is happening at Red Wing right now.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So yeah.
Definitely. The first one is coming up in April, and then you have another one in October, I believe, right?
Yes, correct.
So when are people able to reserve a spot for those?
Both are actually open right now because we've had a lot of interest in the October already, or folks that can't make it in April. Please, can I get in now? So both registrations are open. Our first 2 events sold out, and we have, yeah, just excited for the support that we're getting for these next ones. So I would expect the same.
Awesome, awesome. Well, yeah, and they get to go away with practical skills too. Once you've learned that skill, you can take it on with you forever because you'll understand it. But then having the extra skills that you all are focusing on with the kind of that really focused instruction, going through the safety, and then all the other points of it. I mean, that's something that you, like you mentioned earlier, you're not going to really find anywhere else. So it's definitely worth checking into and making a plan to make it out there. And now, speaking of, I meant to ask you that earlier. Is there a limited amount? Is it because you mentioned it sold out? So what are we looking at size-wise for this?
Yeah, we have 16 spots for each workshop.
16. Okay. So it's not like you're going to be standing in a group of 100 people and you might hear what's being said. Like it's very focused.
Yeah, and we have 5 instructors and a couple other support people facilitating and just making sure that the event is running well. So at all times, it's a 2 to 3 ratio of how many participants per instructor there are. So really low ratio.
Gotcha. Awesome. And so once again, how do they find out more about the Buckin Babes Chainsaw 101?
Yeah, follow us any and everywhere at Red Wing Ranch, and then also at redwingranch.us for our website and how to register. And you'll also see our email on there, so please reach out with any questions. We're really excited.
Awesome. Erin, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I love hearing about new things that I come across, and this is especially when it comes to teaching people the right way. You know, and you guys are definitely doing the right way. So I wish you continued luck in all of this. And one of these days, I'm going to make it out to Red Wing to be able to see it firsthand for sure.
Please do. We want to make it happen. And yeah, this is for anyone and everyone. We need working lands to stay working lands, and we need the skills to do so. Excited to host you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Have a good day. Thanks, Russell.